get back to serious subjects again, David. And well, Celtic Boys Club.
Celtic Boys Club. The first few slides here were actually ones which we ran back in October. You see from the poppy and the heading there. And this was looking at the case then, and it's moved on a little bit, and it's worth just revisiting this, because the social pressure and social media, and to be fair, some of the mainstream media, again, not the BBC, but papers like the Daily Record in Glasgow, are actually moving this story on and continuing to campaign for the victims of abuse, even though there is no sort of official recompense so far for them. Now, this
right.
first slide.
Sorry, David. Just to remind everybody, this is a sort of junior football club linked but not directly owned by Celtic Football Club in Scotland. Is that right?
That's it. It was called the Celtic Boys Club. It's been rebranded and it's called something else now. But it was called the Celtic Boys Club, and it was set up with the approval of Celtic Football Club in 1966. It was very successful in footballing terms. They won the European Junior Cup in 1974, and it's been a nursery for a great many professional players. So a very successful club. Trains at Barrowfield, Celtic's ground, training facility. Wales the Celtic strip, and shares the branding. Now, Celtic, when this abuse came to light, Celtic said the following: following the conviction of Mr. James Torbett, Celtic Football Club wishes to express our deep regret for the incidents which took place and sympathy for the victims who suffered abuse. When the allegations became known in the 1990s, Celtic Football Club took steps to develop a new code of conduct and procedures to protect young people. Now, remember, the founder of this in 1966 has been convicted. So there was decades of abuse before the 1990s, before anything was done. So moving forward in this, coming up to sort of more recent. We'll just quickly run through the next slide here. This is a sort of press coverage that was that actually brought this to the fore, right? So the victims spoke to the Daily Record. The Daily Record campaigned on their behalf. This is how it came out. It wasn't done through the police. It wasn't done through the club. It wasn't done through local authorities and social workers. It was done through the public and the press.
And you're asking there, would this happen today? And I think the answer is probably no.
Well, perhaps not, but certainly the Daily Record is still campaigning at the moment. So the next slide here was announcing that legal action has been taken. So this is ongoing. So there's legal action against Celtic Football Club. And the dynamic of this is that Celtic Football Club is saying, no, the boys club is a separate entity, and it's nothing to do with us legally. And we're very sorry and all that, and we'll give you sympathy, but there'll be no compensation. So that's the Celtic Football Club position. And this is the position that's now coming apart. When we reported this before, we talked briefly about the SFA. The SFA were saying, we believe that the abuses in the past and that everything's fine now. And we did highlight the official inquiry run by Martin Henry. And Martin Henry said, do I believe that currently people in football are safe? Yes, pretty much. So there we go. That was reassuring. We were pretty much safe. And we did point out at the time that Martin Henry was a founder of LBGT Youth Scotland with Jamie Rennie, and he was on the board, and Jamie Rennie was chief executive, and Jamie Rennie was a paedophile who perpetrated the most horrendous abuse on children, and was convicted despite being a member of Common Purpose and Common Purpose trained. So that's the background.
He was a bit more than that, David, because of course he was part of their. Wasn't he part of their?
No, you're thinking of the other one.
Oh, right. Okay.
James Rennie was just common purpose trained, but you haven't mentioned it. So I'll mention it. In the gang that he was part of, they were abusing children with ages of months. So
Yes.
this is pretty disgusting. And as far as we know, Common Purpose never carried out any form of internal investigation to see if there were other child abusers that had managed to creep into Common Purpose's secretive networks.
So the official inquiry has been run by a former associate of this man, and but football's pretty much safe. So that was the position. It's now coming under attack and it's now coming apart. So the Daily Record has reported that the Celtic FC carried out an inquiry back in 1986 and cleared all of the people over these, quote, scurrilous abuse claims. So in 1986, Celtic Football Club board was looking into this, and they were saying there's nothing to see here, despite the former head of Celtic Boys Club going public in the press and saying there was abuse going on. The Celtic board said, no, it's all a lie. It's scurrilous rumours. There's nothing to see here. Now the next photograph is just astonishing. This is in the Daily Record today, right? So this is, you see this, the boys of Celtic Boys Club, and they're celebrating a win. I'm not sure if this is the 1974 European Cup win, but it could well be. So they are celebrating, and there's the adults that are looking after this boys club, and the three ring there have all been convicted of paedophilia, have all been convicted of abusing the children within the care. Now look at the children, is that not what a paedophile ring looks like? This is grooming on a huge scale, and the man in the foreground was the kit man, so he was also involved. So you've got a level of abuse that is institutional. I spoke this week to someone who had a trial for Celtic Boys Club at this point, and he turned up beautifully, naively, in his Rangers kit to have the trial for Celtic Boys Club, and he was told that he probably wasn't the sort of lad he was looking for, though he was a very good footballer, and he didn't go and get a position in the club, but one of his friends did, and that friend was abused, and that friend's in a terrible state now to this day, and the abuse was horrendous, and the abuse was everywhere, and Celtic knew, and this is the thing, they were investigating in '86 and saying nothing's to be seen here, but Celtic knew, and the abusers were actually all eliminated. They were removed from position under the time when Jock Stein was running Celtic, and they were brought back. So there was two periods of abuse. There was an early period, then all the abusers were removed, and then they came back into the club, and the abuse then carried on once again. So there are many questions for Celtic to answer. So this goes on, and if you look at next, the BBC here are reporting. The BBC will report after the people are convicted. The BBC will report on it. Up until that point, they're pretty well silent. They're not the people doing the campaigning that's bringing this to light, but they will report on the convictions. So here you see Frank Kearney, guilty of abuse. Jim McCafferty, who preyed on the dreams of football stardom, and you've got the next slide here. Gerald King, ex-Celtic Boys Club, spared jail despite being found guilty of abuse, and Jim Torbett, the founder of the Celtic Boys Club, guilty of abusing boys. So it's all now being proved in court. Celtic Boys Club has had, in footballing terms, a very illustrious career. If you look on Wikipedia, there's a list of the footballers who have come through that club. And this list here includes Alan Brazil, who's gone public on the abuse that he suffered as a young boy in football. There's also Charlie Nicholas, David Moyes, Tommy Burns, who was the Celtic manager when these abusers came back into the club. All very strange. Now, we've then got the extract from the Celtic newspaper, the Celtic View, that is listing the investigation and how they conclude. This is the investigation into the allegations of abuse back in 1986. They conclude those boys' club leaders who have been placed under a cloud as a result of these rumours have instructed their lawyers to take appropriate course of action, and if necessary to go to a court of law to make sure these scurrilous stories are buried once and for all. An interesting choice of word. I think that's what you call an embedded confession. So we are now This is reporting in the Record again. Patrick Maguire of Thompson's Solicitors. He's representing a lot of the abuse victims, and he said to the Record, the former directors of Celtic have got to be clear about what they thought they were investigating back in the mid-80s. The survivors my team represent deserve answers from the club about these investigations, and they continue to be shocked and insulted that the board maintain that the Boys Club and Celtic FC are separate organisations. The survivors must receive an official apology from the club and be properly compensated for the terrible things that happened to them when, as children, they were under Celtic's care. This is morally right and decent thing to do, but if Celtic continue to ignore us, as I said before, we will see them in court. And then I spoke to Patrick Maguire this morning about this, and he said Celtic need to stop hiding behind lawyers and set up a fund, as Manchester City has done, to negotiate directly with the victims and the representatives. So here you see he's pointed to Manchester City to issue an apology and set up a fund for the Bengal abuse victims. So it is possible for a football club to take responsibility and to make amends and to act appropriately, rather than just hide behind lawyers. And I would say that the social media pressure is mounting. We've seen MSPs who support Celtic Football Club making kind of half-hearted damage limitation statements. That's James Dorman in the MSP. But we're seeing it's not working. Social media is full of comments on this. And the new nickname on social media for Celtic Football Club is Separate Entity SC.